Greetings all, I am Seminary Scholar, and this is my channel where I discuss the beliefs of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. To preface, I have attended the Church's Seminary and Institute program, and I am going to be referring to official church documents in the description. However, I myself am not an official representative of the Church. I'm just someone who is familiar with material who is trying to make it more widely available. This week, I wanted to do another one of my perspective essays, and I wanted to discuss a fairly involved topic, which is what we refer to in the Church as the plan of salvation. And this refers to a diagram that we use. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of visual aid access because of the resources and the setup that I have. I will have a link to the actual diagram in the description below if you are interested in looking at that and following along. But I wanted to kind of get into this because it really is an important part of what we believe and how we're able to understand and make sense of this life. And so I'm going to break it up into several parts. First, I'm going to have a video on the premortal life and earth life. Then I'm going to do another video on the spirit world, then on the resurrection and judgment. And finally, I'm going to talk about the 3 degrees of glory and outer darkness. I do not expect any of you to know what that means yet. I'm going to do a brief overview in this video, and then I'm going to move on in the order that I've discussed from here into the next weeks. So to begin with the premortal life, and this run-through, just to be clear, is going to be a brief run-through. I'm not going to explain everything, just something to kind of get your bearings. But to begin, in the premortal existence, and I've talked about this a little bit in some of my other videos, but we believe that before we came to Earth, we all lived before, hence premortal existence. We lived in a place before we were mortals. And when we lived in this premortal existence, we were spirits. We didn't have bodies yet. And we lived with God. And we were his spirit creations. We were his spirit children. And he wanted to teach us to become more like him. And so we learned. We studied with him. We studied with each other. And we believe that the entire human family, every human that has ever lived or that will ever live, was part of this premortal spirit family. And then there came a point when we could no longer progress. At least not with the methods that had been used. We reached the maximum understanding and knowledge that we could without applying a different method. And so Heavenly Father orchestrated it so that we could utilize a different method. And he created Earth, and he created mortal life. And he created a process through which we could get a body. And this was important because we believe that in the premortal existence, God had a body and we didn't. And because we wanted to be like God, and because he wanted us to be more like him, he gave us the ability to get a body by coming here to Earth. And so we did that. So we came to Earth to get a body and also to learn to be more like Heavenly Father, to learn right from wrong for ourselves through practicing it in actual real-life situations. And this was all meant to be an educational experience. And we would learn about temptations, and we would learn about things that just didn't affect us when we were spirits, because as spirits, we didn't have the same stimuli that we do now that we have bodies. We didn't touch, we didn't taste, we didn't experience all of these same emotional swings or chemical imbalances. And so it's much harder to be righteous with a body than without a body. Bodies are great, bodies are wonderful. We believe that Heavenly Father has a body. It's the mastery of it. We need to learn to be spiritual beings who have mastery over our physical forms, and that is the objective. And obviously, after we've spent time in this life, we all come to a point where we die, and we believe that immediately after we die, we go to a waiting room of sorts, and this waiting room is called the spirit world. And we believe that when spirits die, they are taken into this waiting room and they remain there until all of the spirits who have yet to be born, because we believe that in the premortal existence, every being that has ever lived or that will ever live existed there. And so until every person has had the opportunity to come through and gain a body, all of these other people who have already lived and died are going to be waiting in the spirit world. Now, in the spirit world, there are two sections. One is called Spirit Paradise, and the other is called Spirit Prison. Spirit Paradise is for those who chose to accept the gospel as we understand it as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. These are those who chose to accept the gospel in life, those who had the opportunity and those who took advantage of that opportunity. And the other part of the spirit world is called Spirit Prison, which is accurate, but it is also somewhat misleading. It is the place where those who either did not have the opportunity or refused the opportunity in life to embrace the gospel of Jesus Christ, to make those covenants, that is where they stay. And there is mobility between those two. You can progress from Spirit Prison to Spirit Paradise. And in fact, there is an active process for facilitating that movement. And we will get into that. But that is how that is facilitated. And that's how things will progress until all the spirits who were in the premortal existence come through and have the opportunity to gain bodies and gain their mortal experience. After that point, we'll begin a process that we call the judgment and resurrection, where each spirit will be assessed based on their desire to progress, their willingness to progress, and to make the sacrifices required to progress, and their ability to progress. And based on these three factors, they will be resurrected to different kinds of bodies. And we believe that people will be resurrected to their original body, but in a ideal form, where there will be no sickness, no mental illness, no chemical imbalances. These bodies will be without flaw. But according to those factors that we mentioned before, desire to progress, willingness to make the sacrifices to progress, and ability to progress, individuals will be sorted into different sections, and depending on how willing and how able you are to progress based on the decisions that you made in the premortal existence and in your earth life, you'll be given a body of varying degrees of glory. And the highest, of course, being those who have a desire, who are willing to sacrifice, and who are able to progress. And generally, if you have a desire and you're willing to sacrifice, you will be able to progress. I can't think of a situation where that would not be true. But they will be placed into the highest category. And there's a gradient going all the way down to those who don't want to progress at all and who aren't willing to make any sacrifices to progress. And they are obviously, and it's a gradient, and it's a sliding scale. And according to this sorting, individuals will be placed in different places. They'll be placed with the people who are like them, who want to be like they want to be. And this is not done out of any kind of separation or segregation. This is done primarily for the comfort of the people who are being sorted. Because if you have someone who doesn't want to progress at all, who is completely happy with where they're at and who doesn't want anything more to do with progression, then they're not going to be content living in a world full of people who all they want to do is progress. It would be exhausting for them. And so they are put in a place with people like them. And there is, I don't think there's mobility between these, but there's visitation ability. So if you have a friend or a family member who does not want to progress as much as you do, you aren't entirely cut off from them. We have very few details about this, but we do know that it's going to be as artfully designed as everything else that we have seen in the gospel, and that it will be masterfully designed. And that is the breadth of the plan of salvation. Now, I know I've been going through, and I've been calling this process the plan of salvation. And this next point is not substantiated by any piece of evidence that I'm going to provide, but I think that it would be more accurate to call this the path of salvation, because the plan of salvation is not any of these things. None of these things make salvation happen. The plan of salvation, and this part is doctrine, the plan of salvation has always been and will always be Christ's atonement. Without Christ's atonement, this little diagram doesn't work. And that is important to understand, because I'm going to be walking through this, I'm going to be describing it as the plan of salvation, because it's an accurate model. This is the accurate flow of how a spirit progresses through premortal life, earth life, death, the spirit world, judgment and resurrection, and then they're sorted into the degrees of glory. But the thing is, that is the path. That is the path that we walk. The plan has been and always will be that Christ came and he atoned for all of the mistakes that he knew we would make through this learning experience. And he enabled us to leave the presence of Heavenly Father, to make mistakes, to learn from those mistakes, and to choose to return. And that has always been the plan. Thank you for joining me as I'm explaining this. Thank you for taking an interest. Please subscribe if this is something that you enjoyed or find insightful, or have found insightful. And thank you very much for sticking with me.